like I said, on Wednesday, a little after 2:19 p.m., a killer who I just don't want to name. I'm not gonna say this person's name. His name, quite frankly, is not relevant. It's what he did that's relevant, and it's the reaction from politicians, the reactions from our so-called representative leaders, and I use that word representative very loosely, and I use the word leader even more loosely, because they don't represent us. That's very clear, and it's debatable how much leadership goes into the decisions that they make, and how good of leaders they actually are. But I'll get to that in a second. I'll get to that little bit later on in the stream. But this killer, this lunatic, walked into a school that he used to attend before he got kicked out because they knew he had problems. And in Parkland, Florida, he walked into this school and used the AR-15 that he owned to murder 17 people, which included faculty and students. And this story, the day that it actually happened, I was just stunned, right? But all yesterday, I kid you guys not, all yesterday I had a headache. I don't know if it was the anticipation for the Black Panther premiere, and I was just so hype about that it gave me a headache and just made me a little lightheaded. But that doesn't usually happen for me. Like, I don't usually get headaches when I get excited about stuff. I know that happens to some people. You know, some people can work themselves up in anticipation for something so much that it makes them a little ill. I've never had a problem with that in the past, though. So I'm inclined to think that it was this story that literally made me sick. It makes me sick, and not nauseous. It wasn't a stomach sort of thing. This thing made my head hurt, knowing that not only are these shootings now predictable, because they happen so regularly, and I'm about to show you guys some data. You guys know I like to bring out the data. I'm gonna bring out some data that shows just how commonplace these shootings are. But it not only made me sick because this is predictable, but it made me sick because the reaction to this shooting is so predictable. It's so predictable that you had people on CNN, on MSNBC, because I was watching the cable news. You know, in situations like this, you're kind of forced to watch the cable news because they're the ones on the ground, right? So I was watching CNN. I was bouncing back and forth between CNN and MSNBC. And the anchors on both channels were like, yeah, you know, this is going to be predictable. People's reactions are going to be predictable. They're going to come out with the thoughts and the prayers, and nothing's going to be done about it. This is going to be a story. This is going to be a story for maybe a day or two. Well, not a day, but maybe a few days. This is going to be a story for maybe 2, 3, 4 days. Okay, and then they're going to move on to something else. And lo and behold, just as people predicted, guess what happened? You had politicians coming out talking about thoughts and prayers. You had people, local officials in the area, the governor, the superintendent, everybody's coming out talking about thoughts and prayers. Just all of this just seems so scripted at this point. And I know it's not scripted from the point of view of people knowing that it kind of is scripted from the point of view of people knowing that they're going to happen, because like I said, it happens so often that you know it's going to happen eventually. You just don't know where and you don't know when, but you know it's going to happen. So the reactions are just so predictable, and it's knowing the inaction from our politicians on this issue is just it's mind-numbing how how this is just allowed to go on in this country. And I feel terrible for the people, for the families who lost people, who lost children and loved ones in this shooting. And America is averaging one school shooting every 63 hours. Okay, that's how bad it is. And that's just the school shootings. That's not including mass shootings in general that aren't on school properties. So this is from the Huffington Post. It says a reported shooting at a South Florida high school on Wednesday marks the country's 17th shooting at a school in 2018, just 45 days into the year. Now, this was originally reported as the 17th mass shooting at a school. Like, people were saying that there have been 17 or 18 mass shootings at schools. That's not actually accurate, and people have had to come out and correct that. But there have been 17 or 18 shootings, maybe not mass shootings, but just shootings in general at a school so far in just 2018. That's an average of one shooting incident on a campus every 63 hours. Thus far in 2018, more than double the number recorded in any of the previous 3 years in that same period. So this is something that is just getting worse. Okay, this situation is not getting better, it's getting worse. I remember when I was younger, and I remember when Columbine happened, and Columbine was not considered normal. You know, you didn't have shootings like that on a regular basis. And since Columbine, this has just become normal. And what's really dangerous is people are becoming, I'm afraid some people are becoming numb to it, because when things like this happen on such a regular basis, whether you're talking about Vegas, whether you're talking about Sandy Hook, whether you're talking about the Pulse nightclub shooting, whether you're talking about the Charleston shooting with the Charleston 9 at Mother Emanuel, this stuff is happening so often that people just, I'm not going to say people don't care, because people do care, but the extent of the outrage is just becoming numb for some people. And that's very, very bad, because it means that some people in society, and I don't think this is really, I do think that there's a political difference in how people, whether you are on the left or on the right, I do think there's a difference between how different groups of politically minded people are going to react to this. But like, we cannot allow this to continue. And I don't know, the answer is easy. The answer to the problem is easy, but the political will is just not there. So let me just continue. The numbers that I just gave you, those numbers are according to data compiled by the gun control advocacy organization called Everytown for Gun Safety, which defines a school shooting as any time a firearm is discharged on or around a campus. 17 people were killed in Wednesday's shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. That was the name of the high school. President Donald Trump has spoken vaguely about the need to curb shootings, saying after the Las Vegas shooting that the U.S. would, quote, start talking about gun laws as time goes by. Trump is not going to do anything. And Trump and many Republicans, because Democrats are better on this issue than Republicans, Trump and the entire GOP, they're complicit, and they're not going to do anything about this. The money that they are getting from the NRA at this point needs to be looked at as blood money. Or because they're literally now at this point being paid off not to do anything. Okay, and that just goes to show you how deeply corrupt this country is becoming, and already has become, quite frankly. So I mentioned Trump's response. He said he made no mention of guns. He only talked about mental health, and this is another common theme that I've seen in the media. This is a common theme that I've seen echoed among politicians, not just Trump, but the Republican governor of Florida. Nobody wants to talk about guns. Every time these situations happen, you get people who say, well, it's not time to politicize it. Let's get the information. And they just repeat that. And what they're really doing is they're waiting for the story to die down and go away. Because okay, so where's the research? Where's the studying that they did after Vegas? Let's ask them that. What conclusions have you come to after Vegas? So if it's too early to politicize this, is it too early to politicize Vegas still? And that happened months ago. No, this is about Republicans and a lot of the gun rights advocates in this country who are putting their right to own guns ahead of the safety and the lives of Americans across this country. Their being able to own guns means more to them than people getting shot and killed by people who should have never owned guns in the first place. Because we've made it entirely too easy for people in this country, especially people with actual mental health problems. We've made it entirely too easy for people to gain access to guns. So because of this, these shootings are happening way more often than they actually should be happening. Especially when you compare our shootings and our numbers to other developed countries. It's like night and day. It's not even close. So Trump's new budget not only cuts funding from mental health programs, okay, but also cuts millions of dollars from the gun background check system. That's absolutely insane. So here this guy is going on television talking about, we need to look at mental health. This guy is cutting funding from mental health programs. He's making it easier for people who shouldn't own weapons to get weapons. Trump got $30 million from the NRA by himself. This isn't including other members of the GOP. Trump by himself got $30 million from those people. So he basically got paid to not take this issue seriously. And we saw even when Obama was in office, we saw how resistant the Republicans at the time were to doing anything about gun control because first of all, because they didn't want to give Obama any political wins. Okay, so the Republicans under Obama were completely un-American. Okay, and their treatment of Obama when he was in office, and their complete undemocratic and un-American conduct while he was in office. Okay, but we're seeing that it wasn't even about Obama because they're not even doing anything under Trump. They're not going to do anything about this issue. Nothing. And people have to start to ask themselves, should these people be in power? Obviously, the answer is no. These people do not represent us. And if they don't represent us, then we really don't have a representative democracy. This is a failure of democracy. This is showing flaws in our democratic system. It's showing how weak our democratic system is. Our democracy is so weak that we have basically a plutocracy at this point. We have rule by the rich. Rule by the rich and rule by corporations. And they run this country through lobbying. Because they pay off politicians through legalized bribes. And because of this, the politicians really represent them more than they represent us. That should be clear as day at this point. So let me pull up another Huffington Post article regarding Trump. Where is it at? Hold on, family. All right. So this Huffington Post article is called "Trump's Budget Cuts." Trump's budget cuts millions of dollars from gun background check system. Okay. This would significantly undermine efforts to keep firearms out of dangerous hands, gun control advocates say. They have a picture of Trump standing in front of this giant NRA banner at an NRA, forum that he went to at some point in time in the past. It says President Donald Trump's newly unveiled budget will cut millions of dollars from the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, which gun dealers use to verify if someone is banned from buying a gun before selling it to them. Buried on page 719 of his fiscal year 2019 budget released on Monday, the president calls for cuts to the National Criminal Records History Improvement Program and the NICS Act Record Improvement Program. Both provide federal grants to states to help them improve their reporting on criminal records and protection orders to the national database for background checks, including domestic violence records. The two programs are currently budgeted at $73 million. Trump's budget proposal for the fiscal year that begins October the 1st would slash their funding to $61 million, which amounts to a 16% cut. Gun control advocates say these federal grants have been, quote, critical funding sources for states trying to routinely submit comprehensive records to the National Background Check database. Quote, President Trump claims that he wants to build a safe, strong, and proud America, but his actions do not live up to his words, said Robin Lloyd of Giffords, the gun safety group founded by former Representative Gabby Giffords, Democrat of Arizona, who survived a gunshot to the head in 2011. Quote, instead of strengthening the nation's background check system to make it to make sure it effectively keeps guns out of dangerous hands, he slashed funding for this critically important system, which will significantly undermine its effectiveness. End quote. So, that's part of the article. I'm not going to read the whole article. That's the gist of the article, though. So, yeah, that is how deranged this country, and when I say this country, I'm not talking about rank and file Americans. Okay, I'm talking about the leaders of this country. Again, loosely, using that word very loosely. Okay, I'm talking about the people in this country who we elect to put to correct problems. They're not actually correcting these problems. They're making these problems worse. And they're doubling down on some horrendous policy ideas that are literally going to lead to the deaths of more Americans. Everybody should be worried about this. So it came out soon after the shooting that the particular killer in this case, who, like I said, I'm not going to name, had ties to a white supremacist group known as the Republic of Florida, which is a group. It's a white supremacist militia in Florida that, quite frankly, nobody has ever heard of before this incident. Okay, and it came out through primarily, I think, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. They were the first ones on this, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but they were definitely one of the first ones to put this out there, to put this information out there. And you can either go to the ADL's Twitter page, and you can see the link to the website that they or you can see the link to the article that they posted on their website. It's titled, Florida White Supremacist Group Admits Ties to Alleged Parkland School Shooter, and then it gives the shooter's name. It says a spokesperson for the white supremacist group Republic of Florida, or the ROF, claimed to the Anti-Defamation League on Thursday, February the 15th, that the killer, the man charged with the previous day's deadly shooting spree at a Parkland, Florida high school, was associated with his group. Now there's an update, and the update basically says that the leader of this group, who was claiming association with the killer at first, he's now backtracking, and the police have even come out and said that as of right now, they don't know if there are any direct ties between the killer and this group. I'm assuming they're still looking into it, but again, this is just so typical. In so many of these cases that involve shooters, and especially if the shooter is white, they go out of their way to push the mental illness angle, and they go out of their way to claim that these people aren't associated with groups, and they're just lone gunmen. Okay, in some cases I believe that might be true. In other cases, I find that very sketchy, because when the shooter is of a different complexion, or especially of a different religion like Muslim, the dialogue in this country and on the media and among law enforcement is completely different. They don't hesitate to throw out terrorism labels. They don't hesitate to try to connect people with ISIS and all these other groups. But for some strange reason, when it's other people, the narrative changes. The narrative always changes. So let me read some of this article to you. It says the killer, who is 19, a former student at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, allegedly entered the school on Wednesday. That's just repeating stuff that I told you guys already. After self-described RF members claimed on the discussion forum 4chan that the killer had also been a member. So you had members of the ROF on 4chan claiming that this crazy person was a member of their group. Okay, the ADL spoke with an ROF member who identified himself as Jordan Jareb. Jareb, who is based in Tallahassee, is believed to be the leader of the ROF. In 2016, he was arrested on charges of threatening a staffer in the office of Florida Governor Rick Scott because he was allegedly angry at the staffer's son. Jareb said that the killer was associated with ROF, having been, quote, brought up by another member. Jareb also claimed that the killer, the terrorist, that's how he should really be recognized, had participated in one or more ROF training exercises in the Tallahassee area, carpooling with other ROF members from South Florida up to Tallahassee. The ROF has members in North and South Florida. The alt-right white supremacist group borrows paramilitary concepts from the anti-government extremist militia movement. And so ROF describes itself as a, quote, white civil rights organization fighting for white identitarian politics, end quote, and seeks to create a, quote, white ethno-state in Florida. So they're basically white supremacists. You know, they can try to use the label of civil rights all they want. They're not tricking anybody. They're a white supremacist organization that low-key advocates for killing people. Okay? And they openly advocate for they call them lone gunman activists. Okay? No. They don't say lone gunman. They say lone wolf activists. So you can read between the lines and you know exactly what that means. I talk so much about not falling for how a lot of these white supremacist groups try to co-opt language that you see a lot of black civil rights people using, and black activists. They try to co-opt language that they see black people using in other groups of people, and they try to co-opt like civil rights and things like that. They try to co-opt these words to try to make it seem like they're not white supremacists. Okay, because they feel like they could be more accepted if they use terms like, "Oh, we're just a white civil rights organization. We're no different than the NAACP, which is a black civil rights organization." They play little BS games like that. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for that Jedi mind trick. So like I said, they're now the Jeb dude, Jereb, whatever his name is. He's now coming out distancing himself, and this is what I actually think this makes the likelihood that the killer, the white supremacist terrorist in this case, I actually believe now that he definitely is associated with this group. Because if this was something where the ROF was coming out claiming that he was theirs just for shits and giggles and just for clicks and just to get their name out there and to troll the public, why would you need to necessarily distance yourself from that previous statement if you know that there's no real connection between you and the killer anyway? Like so even if you do think, okay, well, if I say this, then the police and the FBI or whoever's investigating this, they're going to come and they're going to start investigating me and what I'm doing. But you know that there's no real link between you and the killer because you know you're just trolling. So why would you distance yourself from the previous statement? Unless, of course, you weren't thinking because you're ignorant and you saw this as an opportunity to brag because he was one of yours, and you like you say on your own website, you advocate for lone wolf activists, quote unquote, and he was acting out in that way. He was acting as a lone wolf activist. And something else, by the way, before I finish that thought, this Jereb dude actually even on his social media celebrates a white supremacist terrorist, a documented terrorist who killed scores of people in Norway. So we already know that this is a man who likes terrorist activity. And then you see that they're actually even using ISIS tactics. Whether or not these crazy ROF people, whether or not they were actually telling the truth or not about whether or not this killer is actually one of theirs, the mere fact that they're even claiming this, whether it's true or not, puts them directly in line with groups like ISIS, because that's what they do. Whenever you have a Muslim who commits an act of terrorism, across the world, you always have ISIS is coming out and claiming that he's one of theirs, even when that might not be true. And it's been proven on several instances that what they're claiming is actually not true. We haven't found any connection between this Muslim terrorist and ISIS. This is just something that they're claiming. This is just something that they're saying. So this ROF, they're like parallel to Islamic terrorist groups. Okay, but going back to my previous statement, I believe that he actually is connected to this group because he's now coming out and saying, "Oh well, I misspoke. I didn't mean that." He said something along the lines of he was sleepy or he was speaking in sleep or some dumb mess that he said. He's now claiming that he was lying. So I don't buy that though. And I think this whole thing is going to be swept under the rug. You're already seeing people come out and say that it's not true because, like I said, they're trying to distance this from acts of terrorism. They're trying to, because if you connect him to this ROF group, then it becomes harder to make that lone wolf argument. It becomes harder to make that argument. It becomes harder to say that, it's just a mental health issue, which is what they want to say. They don't want to connect it to terrorism because they don't like calling white killers terrorists, obviously. And that's been shown on numerous occasions. So there have been a number of right-wing lies about this shooting. BuzzFeed documented 17 different fake stories. Okay. And as I've said several times before, the whole fake news talk from the right, guys, a lot of that is projection. So much of that is projection. Most of the fake news comes from the right wing. The main perpetuator of the fake news claims is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, he's one of the biggest liars to ever sit in the Oval Office. This man lies through his teeth, and a lot of his supporters are no different. When I get to Black Panther, I'm trying to hurry up and get through this story so I can talk about Black Panther. When I get to Black Panther, you're gonna see a similar situation where you have a lot of haters and a lot of trolls who are making up fake news stories about people being attacked after going to Black Panther. They routinely just make stuff up. They make stories up and they prop up these straw man arguments to make themselves feel better. They're some of the biggest perpetuators of fake news in the country. Okay, I'm not saying that there isn't propaganda on the left or there's not propaganda in other groups, but you're hard pressed to find any group in this country that lies as routinely as the right wing does. They have entire propaganda sites just filled with lie after lie after lie after lie after lie. This is a thing for them. And we have to understand that right now, in this country right now, we're basically in the middle of an information war. So, I'm not going to read every bit of I'm not going to read every single one of the fake news articles or the fake news stories, but just know that there are a lot of fake stories out there. And you see this after every shooting. After every shooting, you have people who come out making claims about stuff that's just not true. So you have to be very careful about what you're retweeting, because there's just too much. There are too many people who politicize these shootings as soon as they happen, because they wait around to see if the killer is Muslim or if the killer is black, so they can come out and spew a bunch of Islamophobic and racist rhetoric. So the last thing I'm going to say about this story, because I've been talking about it for almost 40 minutes now. When this country didn't do anything after Sandy Hook, and our politicians weren't moved by children being massacred, okay, it was clear at that point that nothing would be done. The politicians in America who continue to allow these massacres to occur are not only complicit, but they have blood on their hands. And any politician that isn't taking this seriously needs to be taken out of office. They do not need to be in office right now. So that's all I wanted to say about what happened in Parkland. I haven't seen the news yet today. I haven't turned on the mainstream media today. I'm sure they're back to talking about Russia. Honestly, at this point, it wouldn't surprise me. But